People of Reddit, what is the scariest thing you think mankind has ever created? The most terrifying inventions are biological weapons. You can't see them, and you die horribly. In the best case you die within minutes, in the worst it can take hours or days. Or you don't die, and there are permanent damages to you. Surprised this isn't higher up given we are in the middle of a pandemic. Imagine covered but with around 50% of infected dying. Edit okay. Just imagine covered then. Or airborne HIV. Or pick your favorite pathogen. The point stands. Link. All research on H5N1 transmission was halted after laboratories at the University of Wisconsin and the Dutch Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam, Netherlands created mutant forms that could be transmitted directly among ferrets. This was concerning, because viruses that are easily transmissible between ferrets are often also easily transmissible between humans. The scary part is that it wasn't even that hard to do that experiment either. They applied mutagenic pressure on the virus and selected for airborne transmission. That's literally freshman level biology. The scary part is rogue terrorists will be able to produce such deadly weapons as a side effect of our technological advancements. The good thing is the disease fighting capabilities have also improved much. With stay-at-home orders and modern vaccine development, most people won't get infected. Oh, wait. Supposedly both the US and Russia have created bioweapons in labs that are hundreds of times more lethal and contagious than anything out in the open real end of the world shit. I heard that they were designed more for the practice of defeating them. But the thought that one could escape and end humans is terrifying. What are you talking about? If an actual deadly bacteria or virus was to escape, humans would take action. They would stay at home so as not to give it a chance to infect others. They would wear protective gear if needed to meet someone. They would take vaccine as soon as it became available. They would absolutely not cross international borders so as not to spread it even further. They would responsibly contact the authorities upon noticing signs of infection. What are we even worrying about? Cries in 2020. Yeah, we will come together. The Tsar Bomba's explosion was supposedly only half its full power. Imagine the destruction of a powered Tsar Bomba in the hands of any military or corrupt force. Absolutely terrifying shit to think about. Didn't they reduce the power because they thought the pilots wouldn't survive the blast radius? Regardless, absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure it still almost killed them too. The story I have heard was that with the reduced 15-ton version the pilots were given a 50-50 chance to survive. Imagine giving pilots a 50-50 chance of death just to test a weapon for which you already have smaller working versions. The moral bankruptcy is astounding. Edit sources because someone didn't link that there weren't any. Link. Nuclear weapons and bioweapons. Bioweapons are easily worse than nuclear weapons. Even in the worst case scenario, nuclear war, life goes on and recovers. The environment wouldn't even be appreciably more radioactive compared to today after just a few centuries. With a biological weapon though, things can get way worse. What happens if someone makes airborne rabies, or splices the genes to produce botulinum toxin into species of microorganisms that are far more ubiquitous than Clostridium botulinum? You could turn entire continents into wastelands where nothing with a nervous system can survive. Heck, you could kill most of the planet like that, especially if you put it into phytoplankton. The worst part is that bioweapons do not decompose eventually like chemical weapons, or decay away like nuclear fallout. Biological weapons are alive. They grow and spread. And once they are out there they become a part of the environment permanently, unless you do some really tricky safeguarding against unlimited cell divisions. That is somehow 100% effective. In a world where all the water on the planet, salty or fresh, is loaded with neurotoxins produced by bacteria, animal life needs to either not have a nervous system, or it needs to evolve new mechanisms to send nerve impulses that are not blocked by the toxins. That basically means reverting evolutionary progress to the Precambrian, and optimistically puts life back about 500 million years. I used to think bioweapons couldn't be that worse than a nuclear Armageddon, but the idea of botulinum toxin being produced by phytoplankton is indeed far more terrifying. Demon core, and a screwdriver to handle it. Seriously. Who decided to test a ducking nuclear core with no protective gear and a goddamn screwdriver? Still. At least they figured out that if you can see it flash blue you die in a week or less. Seriously. Who decided to test a ducking nuclear core with no protective gear and a goddamn screwdriver? Peek, don't be a pussy, you'll be fine. And I've done it this way 100 times. It's been fine every time, culture. Don't be a pussy, you'll be fine. They knew they would die young regardless of if there was an accident or not. They studied exactly how dangerous it was for a living. Torture. Ever heard of the bamboo torture? Basically tie a person down onto the ground, where a bamboo shoot is growing. Make sure the bamboo is under the person and let them stay there for a few days and the bamboo will pierce the dude as the bamboo grows. Oh, and that nasty one, where the guy is stuck in middle of the pond ocean, or whatever and strapped between two boats sandwich, and fed honey and milk only. Not bad. Well, you can't clean yourself as you defecate, and honey attracts bugs and milk goes bad eventually, and bugs grow from your feces, and piss and eat you alive. Tnt Dynamite. The N who created it had no idea what the implications would be in the long term as far as advancement in weaponry, and was very despondent about the whole thing, and believes it was the worst mistake of his life. He originally made TNT to make nitroglycerin a safer substance to work with as it can detonate with any sudden movement. He mixed iodine from a first aid box with it. A vicious cycle, where we have the technology to solve our problems, but can't because not everybody can agree on it. It must be a real bummer being a super duper scientist or something. More often than not, they've got the answers. Just that no one wants to listen. Like screaming into a void every minute of your life. I actually switched majors in college for this precise reason alone. I used to want to pursue marine biology. The first year was depressing. What happens in the entire environmental science field is that people pursue them because they want to save the environment. However, the only available job opportunities are to help companies exploit the environment. Jobs like surveying, land for logging companies, or finding mines for mining companies. These people don't want to take no as an answer. Another path is to become a scientist. But as you have guessed it, nobody would listen. We already know that our world is headed to a doomsday. The carrying capacity of planet Earth is finite. And when we inevitably overshoot, mass death is assured. But there's nothing we can do to stop it. The nuclear bomb for sure. I mean, devil's advocate here. But mad is probably a big reason why there hasn't really been another large-scale war between the superpowers. Even with all the violence happening today, we really are living in a time of relative peace compared with pretty much any other time in history. You're not the devil's advocate here. You're just proving how his point is completely valid. Think about it. It's such a scary weapon that exists but nobody has the ball to use it because of how scary life would become if it was ever used again between multiple countries with it. Dan Carlin in his most recent Hardcore History podcast makes the point that using atomic weapons in Japan was perhaps necessary as it prevented their use thereafter. If the bombs hadn't have been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bigger ones would have been used somewhere else. We had to see what they could do to learn not to use them. In the debate about whether the A-bomb should have been used, it's food for thought, not a perspective I'd considered before. There was a persistent belief in the US armed forces throughout the 50s and 60s that we could use nuclear weapons strategically on the battlefield without triggering Armageddon. We figured we could use tiny nuclear weapons more effectively than dropping hundreds of conventional bombs. There was, from my limited understanding, a power struggle between the Army and the Air Force over who would be in charge of the nukes. Oppenheimer sided with the Army because he believed the Air Force guys were ducking nuts and couldn't be trusted to use the weapons responsibly. The Air Force also backed the research into thermonuclear weapons, which could only be used to obliterate all of mankind. Fusion weapons were so large that the only thing they were practical for was vaporizing large civilian centers. For opposing the Air Force and the development of the H-bomb, Oppenheimer was stripped of any nuclear regulatory access and labeled a communist. Torture devices. Thomas the Tank Engine. That thing scares the shit out of me. Imagine his angry German cousin, Gustav a railway gun. That would be a neat episode. Thomas has to bring him some allergy medicine because every time he sneezes, He shells Paris. Furbies. What the duck were those furry spawns of Satan? I swear if you took the batteries out the monstrous little bastards would keep talking. Fueled only by the eternal souls of the damned. Teletubbies. The toy one I had randomly goes off, so threw it in the basement. Biological weapons. Sure, there's a convention that countries have agreed to that makes production illegal. But not all countries abide by it. And as the good guys you need to have your own in the pack, so they'll be too afraid to use it. Yeah, nukes are scary. But at least that's an instant death for most of the population. A biological weapon could take a long team to actually kill a population. Or even spread. Heck, even COVID took a relative long team to spread. Took months, whereas nukes would be a few hours. Plus not everyone would be susceptible to the weapon. Imagine surviving a pandemic that killed 99% of the global population. Even global thermonuclear war would have more survivors than that. The hydrogen bomb. Sexual askreddit threads with more upvotes than comments, while an interesting one like this has less upvotes than comments. Horrifying world. Social media easily does more harm than good. No prior human invention has unraveled democracy so effectively. Probably the stuff we don't even know has been created. Plastic, apparently. That dead girl that crawled out of the ducking TV in the ring. Weaponized diseases and biological warfare in general. People think nukes are scary, but Fez kill way faster than bio weapons. Edit spelling. Social media. Mr. Socko and the Mandible Claw. Social media and the internet. In 20 years it's done more damage to the fabric of social discord and interaction than pretty much anything else I can think of. I think people underestimate how damaging a fractured society or leadership is compared to tangible threats like nuclear weapons and war. People dismiss history and then ask why empires fall. Then someone has to inform them that most empires fell because of degradation of the underlying society's cohesion and or the ending of a common bond, death of a unifying leader, lack of collective purpose, etc. I have a couple. Nuclear bombs. Deliberately mutated super diseases. An economic system which prioritizes growth over everything else. Completely disregarding people's happiness, health, and the overall sustainability of the planet. Me. I wear socks with sandals. Everyone is saying religion, but in reality just religious extremists. KKK, Taliban, ISIS, and any horrible group you can think of is caused by religious extremists. Edit, I'm atheist, but I also think it is ignorant to speak down on religion. Most of the time it creates many loving communities. Exactly. I generally identify with agnosticism. Because the existence of a higher power can't be proven one way or the other, at least with our existing set of data. However, I can understand religion and atheism alike, and they are both valid worldviews to me. Whatever helps you deal with existential crisis, you know, as long as you aren't hurting someone, you're okay in my book. I used to be pretty religious, but after having seen some of the horrible things that have been done in the name of religion, but as you said, those are extremists, I took a step back from it all. More mankind. Greed. Shredder cheese. It must go. Make America great again. My cousin's GF. She's scary as duck sometimes. I honestly think the internet made everything both good and bad way too easy. I'm honestly going to have to go with social media in its current form. Nuclear weapons have chains of command and are kept under lock and key. Some private cannot initiate a nuclear strike, but any nitwit can hop on Facebook, Instagram, etc. and fall into the rabbit hole of extremism, believing whatever some shithead tells them due to lack of critical thinking skills. People who know how to exploit social media doing just that, and so forth. And this has happened to millions of people. I honestly think social media has been a net negative to humankind in that, if it had been invented in the 1940s, we would still have polio crippled people being placed in iron lungs every year. Edit initiate, intimate, ducking autocorrect. Nukes. The only other thing it'd say that is on par are the different regimes throughout history and how they got so damned powerful, like the Nazis, the CCP, etc. Artificial intelligence. I just saw a video of a robot controlled by neurons from a rat's brain, so that's alarming. The scariest thing mankind has ever invented is still a secret, because if they told us we wouldn't be able to sleep. Reading this comment is scary enough. It's like mankind wanna kiss his ass goodbye. Ourselves. We are nature's greatest predator that we know of. It started with fire and the wheel. Now we have hydrogen bombs. Artificial intelligence. Just like Elon Musk said, AI is more dangerous than any nuke. AI isn't that dangerous yet, but it will eventually. For example, AI and bots that are being used in Minecraft. They started off simple, but now they can hunt down players, fight, and beat the game better than any humans can. How long will it take until AI can do the same thing? Imagine a bulletproof 8-foot tall robot that thinks for itself and can lift 10x as much as Olympic bodybuilders. They have already made AI that can learn and improve itself. AI is some scary shit.